Hey everybody, it's Saturday afternoon and I thought we would do a update on my waterfall tank here. I just did a round the world update last night, but it ran almost 35 minutes and we never even got to the waterfall tank, so I figured we'd just save that for its own standalone update video. But quite honestly, there's not a lot going on. I've been standing here for a few minutes trying to think of what to say and what to talk about, and there's not really much to talk about. I did another big water change last night, which is pretty common. I do several a week on this tank, and that is because I'm still fighting the aphids. In fact, I can see one right now that looks like it's still alive right here. Let's see if it still moves. It certainly looks like it's crawling around on the tip of my finger to me, and that means, let's see how long it takes one of those skirt tetras to come eat it. They love those little aphids when I throw them in the water. So I just sprayed it down again last night, and I sprayed it thoroughly with soapy water. I mean, I literally had suds standing on the surface of the tank here. And so I did a huge water change while I was spraying it down. Refilled the tank and everything. And so far, so good. I haven't had any disasters while attempting this process, and I have been staying on top of the aphids. I don't really know what else to do. I don't know how else to take care of them. Anything like a pyrethrin based killer is you can't use pyrethrin based stuff around aquatic life at all, so I'm not even thinking about doing something like that. Seven dust and those kinds of typical, I can't do those kinds of typical sprays. I really can't even do something like a neem oil. Well, I might be able to do something like a neem oil, but I'd be a little reluctant to get any of the oil in the water because of the fish. So doing it the way I'm doing it with a dilute solution, I'm using a spray bottle. It's about a 20, maybe a 30 ounce spray bottle, and I'm putting half a teaspoon of dish soap in it. And that little bit of soapy water is what I'm spraying everything down with. Next time I do it, I'll set the camera up and I'll put it on the fast motion, and I'll show you the whole process of me doing the water change and spraying everything down. Because what I do is I spray it first, get everything soaked, and once it's done, then I start the water change. And by the time I'm mostly done the water change, the plants have dried off enough that I feel that it's time for a second coat, and I go around and just hose the whole place down again and just soak everything, and I mean everything, as much as I possibly can. I turn all the leaves over, I spray from every possible angle I can spray, and these aphids just keep coming back. Of course, remember, there's so many places for them to hide, and aphids are effectively born pregnant. So if one aphid survives, within days I'll have hundreds, and within days after that I'll have thousands again. So I get on top of them every time I see them. I'll probably be in here again tonight doing another spray, since I just found one that was still alive right there, bold as brass, right out in front of us. So I don't know, we'll see. But that's what's going on as far as maintenance on the tank. Of course, every time I do one of these huge water changes, I remove the filter. I will often wipe the algae down off the glass on the front. Sometimes while I'm tinkering around in there, I'll do a little bit of maintenance on my little tank down here. Don't really know if we can call it the red-clawed crab tank anymore. I honestly don't believe we have any red-clawed crabs in there anymore. But I did a water change on that recently. I've been actually adding some water to that. If you can tell, actually the water level's gotten down a little bit low, but I've been bringing the water level up above the lip here. So instead of being completely sandy and then wet down here, it's actually wet up here too. And if the fish wanted to, they could swim all the way across, although we're talking, shallow water. And as you can see by the evaporation, if any had swam up there, they'd be trapped up there at this point. So I don't know. Again, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that tank. I might be doing something with it here in the fairly near future. As far as the inhabitants of the tank goes, I'm still debating whether or not to put my Dumbo guppy in here. This is the tank I bought it for, and I really think it would look fantastic with all these other guppies swimming around in here. So that's probably where it's going to end up. It's just going to be a matter of whether I use it to breed with first. And then once it's done its thing, you know, breeding wise, I can then pull it out of that tank and put it over here and leave the female to get on with all of the difficult part of, you know, breeding the babies and all that stuff. So we'll see what happens with that. Eventually that Dumbo is going to end up in this tank. I have still seen at least one frog. I don't know about all three of them. I'd have to see all three at the same time to know if all three of them are in here, and so far I've only seen one at a time. But I did see one as of last night. I've seen one sculpin. Again, I would need to see more than one to know whether or not they're in there. But I can see how clean the rock is right there, so I suspect that the rubber lip that I put in there a while ago is probably still alive. It's got lots of places to hide, and so it could easily be in there without me even seeing it. Speaking of frogs, there's one in the back right by the heater, rooting around looking for food on the bottom. So something is still in there cleaning the rocks, and you can also see where the wood has been scraped clean. That could be the nearite snails. I do still have nearite snails in here. I see them occasionally, but being scraped that clean, that looks to me more like a rubber lip. Pleco is in there scraping on it. So I suspect one of them is still in here and still alive. My temple plant that I planted here is starting to develop new roots. You can even see some roots right there. I was not able to get the stem all the way down into the ground, but there's a bunch of rocks right here, and what I'm hoping is the roots will grow out and into the rocks and anchor it, and we'll get a lot of really good growth out of this one, judging by the size of the one in my office tank. And then again, you know, like I've said before, underneath of this really powerful, high quality LED, we should get some fantastic growth on it. And speaking of which, when I cut the top off of the one in my office tank, it was already in full flower, and I was really afraid that that far along in its life cycle was going to be too late to cut it and make cuttings. It was also fully exposed above water, and now I've got it in water, and you can see some minor root development all the way up here, but down here, of course, you've got mad root development. So it's been sitting like this with the top end of it up and out of the water, and that's why the roots are growing down like that. That's exactly how it's been sitting. And so last night during the big water change, it got knocked into the tank fully, and in just a day I've actually started to see new growth right here. So I'm going to leave it in the water now and let's let some more roots develop on it, and who knows, maybe we can have two of these, you know, coming up out of here side by side. Or I can put that in another tank, or as usual, I will put my email down below, and if you're interested in buying any aquatic plants, I've always got water sprite, I've always got Java fern, and at times I can make cuttings off of stuff like Anubias or that temple plant, for example. And then of course I've always got stuff like hostas and yard plants and this kind of stuff available if you're interested in anything like that. As far as the plants go, I will say that if we look up here, we can see this is lace leaf water sprite, and then that is the regular broadleaf water sprite, and they're starting to do well. I haven't actually been able to get up there enough to look down and see the root systems developing, but I can see the green new growth just from here. You can see how good that looks. And then of course we've got sweet potato vine, and then this is sweet potato vine too. So they're going to start growing, and hopefully they're going to start flowing down and hanging, and then that's Java fern, and that'll grow up, and you know what Java fern looks like. I'm also really happy to say, if we look at it from the side, look at the three-dimensional aspect of it. Look at how everything's growing out and towards that light. And that's what I was really hoping I was going to get. I didn't want this growing straight up into the waterfall. I wanted it growing out and forward. And I really want the flower spikes to come out and forward, so they're sort of in our face. If you can see all that, it's called motion parallax. It gives you sort of a three-dimensional look, even though you're looking at a two-dimensional screen. By the way everything moves around each other, it gives you much more of that three-dimensional feel. And you can see we've even got my hanging light is now sort of within the canopy and is getting more and more obscured with each passing day. So this should produce some good flowers. We're going to get a lot of good growth off of the sweet potato vine up there. My whatever these things are, I know they're not philodendrons now, but they're growing pretty well. They're doing some vigorous growth, and that's going to just keep growing in, and then whatever this monstrosity is, that's supposed to produce some purple flowers here pretty soon too, and I'm really looking forward to that. So all in all, with the exception of, dealing with those aphids a little bit, it's looking pretty good. I'm really happy with the way I revamped the top of it. It looks a lot better, a lot cleaner than it did before. I'm still not getting a lot of water flow coming over this end. I've sort of given up on that. I just sort of accept that we've got, the waterfall coming off the front there like that. But I've actually kind of grown to like that. I will also point out, for all of you who mention in my yard tours that I should build a pond out in my yard, I know that. I've been talking about doing that for years and years and years. Long before I ever got into fish, I wanted a pond in the backyard, and there's a place where I know I would build it. I've already got the design in my head. I've got 2 different options of the way I could design it. And this waterfall is sort of like the best I could do of recreating that, with the way I've got this water flowing back and forth and then eventually coming down into a pond at the bottom, even though it's a fish tank sized pond. That's sort of effectively the way I see this, is a little flowing stream that I had to sort of compress. Instead of flowing this way towards us, it's kind of flowing down and then into the pond. It's just kind of a flattened out version of what I would do out in the yard. And again, I already know where I would put it and how I would build it and all that kind of stuff. So the next yard tour I do, if I remember, I will point out exactly what I'm talking about, and I'll show you exactly where and how I would build my pond out in the yard. So look forward to that. Make sure you're subscribed. I can't really think a whole lot else to talk about with this tank. Again, not a lot going on animal wise. I will be doing some more water changes and squirting it down with soap and all that, and as I said, I'll go ahead and just set the camera up and just let the video roll while I do that, and we'll get a good look at how thoroughly I really do spray the whole thing down with the soapy water and everything, and how big my water changes are, and so on and so forth. So make sure you subscribe, that way you won't miss that or anything else. And thanks again for watching this update. Don't forget, this is my waterfall tank, and I look forward to seeing you real soon in the next one.